Keita. Hello, everyone. I've thoroughly appreciate the opportunity to chat with everyone today. So yeah, thanks so much for everyone's time.
Mr. Clarke, we've taken the liberty to ask you an interesting question. Are you ready? It won't take more than 10 seconds for sure. And do you see where we're heading with this?
I'm worried, but I'm ready.
All right. Oh, so I get where the most funniest guy comment comes from. So we request you to tell us your all-time best joke, something which works all the time. One-liner.
Oh, you can't put me on the spot like that. That's not fair. I haven't even pre-prepared that one. That I cannot.
My apologies.
And mine are rude, so I want to keep it clean for today. So cannot.
Fantastic, Mr. Daniel. The stage is all yours. Thank you so very much.
Very good. I think I was supposed to present earlier, so I apologize if I've ruined the schedule. Can you guys see my screen okay? I absolutely appreciate Zoom and Teams fatigue and the crazy world that we're all living in. So first and foremost, I wish everyone the safest upcoming few months when we all get through it together. And again, appreciate you just giving me some of the time today while we're all sat in front of our computers. So I've been with Informatica for 10 years, Hong Kong, 9 of those, London, 1 of those. My background is selling low latency trading systems to most of the major stock exchanges and investment banks in the world. My role in Informatica has been very much in line with what Aaron Tan's previous session to look at next gen architectures and help organizations genuinely move into a digital transformation strategy rather than just talking about the FUD. And I hope I go through some of this in more detail over the next 15 minutes or so. For the guys that don't know who we are, Informatica is laser focused on data management. We're a 28-year veteran in the ETL space, extract, transform, and load. And we've helped organizations move heavily from mainframe to relational to Hadoop, Hadoop to now cloud. The big focus that we're working on at the moment is some of the presence that we do in the platform as a service space. A lot of guys don't and wouldn't know who we are, but we have a very strong DNA and pedigree within cloud data management. But a big part to all of this is principally the crossover that we're starting to see between organizations to moving to cloud, the traditional architecture footprints owned by DevOps, and this new world of data ops. And this is where I'm going to try and focus on today and talk through some of these use cases, because we're seeing more and more of the workload as we see organizations building out their data proficiency and their data skill sets, struggling with just management of data. And the big part of where we sit is exactly in this space. So it's how do you manipulate, manage, clean, cleanse, move sizable data chunks between whatever architecture infrastructure you're at, the level of sophistication you are maybe towards cloud or not even deploying cloud yet, as well as incorporating some of the traditional legacy tools that you can't throw away. The biggest thing that we're seeing around data management is trust. As organizations want to become shared service, where they would be able to empower any business user to be able to play with data sets, the only way that principal model succeeds is trust of data sets. And so, as you'll see in some of these statistics, the growth towards cloud, the growth towards CDO regionally has already happened. And we're seeing this in fairly aggressive pockets with some of the work we're doing in Australia, some pockets of Southeast Asia, and certainly Japan. We're seeing big growth in regards to the culture towards a CDO-driven environment, driven via cloud technologies to do that. But again, the most important bit to looking at all of this is the challenges rather than the outcomes. So big thing that we're seeing from first phase adopters of cloud is cost overrun spend. But we're also seeing some real challenges around resourcing and scalability. The same issues that we had with Hadoop 5 years ago, when many organizations were building out their data lakes using Hadoop-based infrastructures, was the challenge of skill sets to be able to genuinely deploy. The same challenges we're seeing in regards to cloud. So it's not just being able to have the right infrastructure and teams in place, but it's also to be able to manage those DevOps cycles. And we have a number of cases where organizations have thought going to cloud is going to be a cost-saving exercise, but they haven't considered a number of underlying factors into their DevOps processes. 6 key things to think about when you're moving to cloud is, of course, the fundamentals: wrong team, wrong emphasis, work efficiencies. But there's also technical nuances that you absolutely need to think about. There are multiple applications that enterprises have used for years that aren't cloud native or cloud ready even. There's also some large overhead costs in rewriting applications for cloud native capabilities. A lot of companies don't even think about this. There's also the challenges around landing zones. And what I mean by that is building out frameworks that we have traditionally done on premise for your cloud native environments. If you don't start with the correct infrastructure to move data sets into the cloud, the hidden costs will absolutely spiral as a consequence of that. And I'll go into even more details. If you look at some of the real basic fundamentals that some of the larger cloud vendors won't be talking to you about, it's things like shutdown, automated shutdown, temporary overrun, storage overrun pieces, tracking of usage rates, workloads. So a lot of these fundamentals haven't been built into the cloud technologies. So when you're doing your operational expenditure of, okay, we're moving certain data sets to the cloud, we're maybe going to augment certain data sets, we have a migration strategy, typically you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a 15% buffer of unknown costs. And a lot of this is based on, as I say, the unknown from application level at plus usage. Where we've done a lot of work, where we have focused our artificial intelligence engine, Claire, is in optimizing this and optimizing the way that you will manage data movement. We've got some very simplistic use cases of where this makes sense and where it's applicable. One very, very simple answer is we look at the utilization of what data sets an enterprise is doing and moving to cloud. By being able to look at patterns of use and patterns of movement, we can start to look into potentially data sets that may be dirty and you're moving dirty data sets that potentially you're using an AWS, Azure or GCP environment out of the optimal hours, data sets in essence where you could be potentially turning on, turning off your infrastructures. These things are very basic, but when you start looking at the ingress and egress cost of moving data into the cloud, it adds up very, very quickly. Another big area that we do is in just purely data profiling. A number of customers are just doing a migration of lift and shift. So they will just take the traditional data sets from some of the legacy architectures and move them into the cloud. And a lot of that is just having to turn off their legacy environment. What we have with automation tools is the ability to profile data pre-movement. So you can actually score and metric data sets before you move them to the cloud. Again, saving on volume, but more importantly, dirty data in, dirty data out. So everything that you're moving to a new real estate, we're automatically detecting with some of our workloads. A third huge piece is in templates. The difficulty now is a number of the hyperscalers are still utilizing hand coding, same as the Hadoop world 5 years ago. We've built out technologies that allow you to template usage and share those templates. So if you have multiple entities and organizations that are doing the same thing, moving data to the cloud, we can automate some of this. And the other big area that we're seeing some more of the sophisticated use cases is around automated matching of data sets, automated cleaning of data sets for deduping. And I'll show you some of these in a use case. But just to reiterate, the biggest part to this is around scaling with templating. If you're utilizing some of your frameworks to moving to cloud, this is absolutely something that can be shared, combined, and consolidated across the architecture group. So it's saving time, but more importantly, mitigating some of the big challenges we've seen with hand coding. This is a key point that everyone needs to have a think about of how you're going to be scaling to the cloud. The other big piece is data quality. Most of the conversations that we're having with organizations, they want to move away from the traditional business intelligence layer where the request came from business, for a certain IT to IT, for a certain data set, run on certain profiles to run a report. Now the new world of self-service means that any business user potentially can be a data wrangler or a basic data scientist. This model will fail unless you have data quality standards built into your infrastructures. So the key point of this is DQ isn't just from the IT team. DQ is across the enterprise, because you need to make sure that people that are playing with cleansed data sets. Same thing that we've done before and I explained. We've done some projects where we automate and do profile checking all of your legacy infrastructure before you make any movements. This is really more prevalent where we see countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, India, where we're dealing with multiple languages, multiple different written and spoken, a lot of the deduplication of addresses and invalid addresses, where it's important that you absolutely start from the basic foundations. So what we do is build out automated data quality capabilities as part of data ops. So rather than your core IT team having to do manual profiling and intervening to check the quality of your data, all of this is manually done. You can see just 2 examples here of how we do this via our Claire automation tool. Left-hand side, you have 3 different definitions of United States. This is very rudimentary things. On the right-hand side, using Claire, we aggregate and consolidate to 1. That's all done automated, gives you the clean data set of everything before. Very, very simple task, but from manual intervention, that's a very menial and elongated thing to do. You can see the before and after is all around the workloads on Azure, where we've saved huge amounts on their ingress cost by ingesting less data sets at phase 1. Really, really simple use case how using AI can help. The key to all of self-service, governance, and data quality is the metadata. Irrelevant of if it's on-premise with legacy, Hadoop for unstructured, cloud for the next generation spin-ups, you still need to understand who's touched what data, what lineage is important for the use cases, and how you're governing who has access to what data set. The key to this is metadata. What we have is automation capabilities to be able to understand and allow business users to have full transparency of where the metadata sits, irrelevant of what system is underlying it. So be that mainframe, relational database, file transfers, a cloud, Hadoop. You need to know where the data set sits. That's exactly where we are doing most of our work for some of the more advanced use cases. And again, when you're setting the right standards and foundation for moving to the cloud, if you're at that stage, oh, excuse the thunder in the background. The first thing is discovery. You need to be able to understand and discover where the data sets are. You could potentially have data sets that could be moved to the cloud you don't know about. Of course, you need to understand what use cases you're going to be using. I've mentioned about cleansing, clean before move, very fundamentals, a lot of people don't. Security is a standard, mastering, but more importantly, governance. If you're starting to do multi-cloud, the smarter organizations are, because they don't want vendor lock-in, they want to decouple how they move data sets, move away from the cloud vendors. The key to this is governance across all of it. And if you aren't starting phase 1 with this principal idea, you're starting on very much the wrong foot. So the consideration of all these 6 factors you need to think about before you even move to data. But why do guys move to cloud? Why do you looking for cloud? The biggest part a lot of people perceive is cost. The biggest piece of this is the fact that you don't want any infrastructure costing. You want to move everything to a serverless environment. That is absolutely the case, but there's also more to it in regards to elastic pricing. The underlying payment of hardware infrastructures has gone. The pricing and billing capabilities of the software industry now is you pay for what you consume, spin up, spin down your compute powers. That is absolutely where you would make advantage of cloud. But key thing to consider is the reasoning for moving to cloud. If you've already made large investments in infrastructure costs, you've already built that into your operational day-to-day. So the idea of cloud now is the speed to market. and that's some of the huge incentives that we've seen with the bigger customers, is the ability to be able to spin up a new architecture in a matter of days. If we look back to the Hadoop world, it was a minimum of 6 to 12 months based on your HBase Hadoop environment to even start moving data in, let alone being able to get any insights. This is the key point. How do you do that with multiple vendors just in the movement, cleaning, and aggregation of space? The challenge is having data quality and data lineage across all of this ever-changing landscape. Exactly where Informatica sits is in any area of data management, we would be able to manage this. But that's not the cool bit. The cool bit is the next level of analytics. What organizations are now striving to do is to have genuine sentiment upon their customers, their employees, their external customers. So the whole idea now is you want to have a true sentiment 360 degree of a customer insight. This could also incorporate things like socioeconomic scoring, and it could also incorporate things like semantics, how a certain individual is feeling about your organization. These are the next level of understanding that is just the expectation as we're moving more towards an e-commerce world, online, etc. What we have now is a genuine insight, and you can see an example of what we've done here, of one individual customer, how he's related to all of his family members, and we can drill specifically into not just his data points, but also the relationships he has with family entities, but also as well what we can do around this transaction history. The applicability to this is also bringing in social intelligence. So you can actually understand profiling of how a certain individual feels about your company, your service, your brand. And we're seeing more and more customers needing to have this level of service. To be able to do this, you need to take advantage of unstructured data, being able to web scrape certain third-party content, like a Facebook, etc., or LinkedIn, where we have sentiment in real time. These are very challenging things to architect towards. The holy grail is this use case, but architecting it is to a key. With cloud, you can absolutely apply this. And I'm going to go through one super quick use case to finish. For the Indonesian customers on this call, I'm pretty sure you're aware of the Lippo Group. 34 subsidiaries, the 9th largest conglomerate within Indonesia. From their perspective, they have a whole portfolio of enterprises basing from birth to grave, so hospitals all the way to funeral services. Hugely successful company, very large in predominant real estate in the Indonesian market. We started with those guys in 2017-18. The whole objective was to consolidate all of the 34 conglomerates to be able to make some customer insight into the data sets. Again, same paramounts around the use cases, just wanted to be driven via a data-driven entity across the enterprise. I'm sure you can appreciate the scale here of what we needed to consolidate in and pull in. The reasoning and the use case was OVO and OVO Pay. So OVO, being part of Lippo, was their payment infrastructure, their merchant payment gateway, where they in essence wanted to incorporate payment and take pay me apps into their environment. Moving into banking, extremely disruptive use case, needed to be driven via data. Where it started to get even more interesting is using third-party merchant content and third-party organizations as a way to enhance the data set, but also as a way to upsell and cross-sell the ability for these guys to be able to use OVO Pay. Incredibly aggressive plans that came from the top of the business all the way through via the CDO and then their chosen architectures. The use cases were defined at the very beginning. The principal use cases that they wanted to start was understanding the customer 360 insight, as I explained, use cases around cross-sell and upsell, and also some of the new smart vending machine capabilities that they wanted to have in their tangible stores. As I mentioned, huge franchises in their Matahari Mall and their Hypermart Mall, where they needed to have a tangible touch point to be able to sell products to their customers. They already defined these use cases and were cleaned out. We started in 2017. The first challenge was not just moving the data, it was profiling it. So in 6 months, we profiled over 500,000 records. And so that is in Bahasa, English, Cantonese, Mandarin. We consolidated all of those into one central hub. So everything that's being analyzed is clean, cleansed. We were also incorporating structured and unstructured from all of these 34 subsidiaries. A large number of the data sets were in JSON, REST, and flat files, and a lot of them were coming from things like hospitals. So the importance of masking PII data and keeping private data sets and fields clean was paramount. The interesting bit was what they did at the December 18 onwards. And this was not only just building out their customer 360 lake, but also to be able to populate out a data discovery store. So any individual business user across the Lippo group can search across their data lake and have true insights on any of their customers, sharing data sets between entities. Huge part. The final part was the fact around their data marketplace, where now they can actually start monetizing the data sets and pushing this out to some of their third-party merchants. So it just shows a really helpful use case of where we started at the very beginning with dirty, disparate data systems, cleanse, consolidate into one. This just shows you how we did it. 34 subsidiaries. They needed to understand individuals, household, consumption patterns, and then on top of that, once they know what you like to spend on, what socioeconomic grouping you're in, then they could start building out some of their campaigns. A really good example here is the insight that they had on their Max coffee chain, just one of their subsidiaries, where they wanted to have a true understanding of the spending habits and socioeconomic habits of an individual. By picking up geolocation data, they could easily understand where a customer works, where a customer potentially lives, and also, of course, where their preferences of their downtime, their free time. So chosen malls, if they enjoyed cinemas, and you can see from here the understanding of a socio-economic scoring of individual level customers is done to such a more granular degree. This is just one of the examples where it was understanding. You walk into a Max coffee stall, because they have that understanding of historic, you would be able to cross-sell, upsell, and have a true understanding 360 view of knowing who this person is and profiling at such a lower level that they've never been able to see before. Just to finalize in the interest of time, this was the conclusion of what we did. So they, as I mentioned, they built out and scoped Smart Cube. The whole idea of this Smart Cube, using their OVO Pay on their mobile phones, you would be able to consume FMCG goods from third parties using this vending machine. Again, only using OVO Pay, but more importantly, using some of the face recognition technologies, they could proactively suggest, based on historic purchasing patterns, certain items that are relevant to you. So a huge omni-channel next generation project in less than 18 months from start to finish with dirty data sets. This is the actual pilot vending machine, just to show you that's done. That's in a few of their stores. Yeah, we're very much proud of what we've done here. I think just for everybody on the call now, the movement towards cloud technologies, the capabilities architecturally are absolutely there. And I totally agree with Aaron's previous session. The key is understanding the use cases and getting the culture towards buying into the data set. If you can mirror those two together, just like we did with Lippo Group, the return on investments, the time to your project delivery is hugely reduced. And of course, you can see from the evidence we did at Lippo. And in the interest of my 20 minutes, I'd love to wrap it up there. I really appreciate everybody's time in listening to me today. And yeah, Nikita, thank you so much.
Absolutely amazing, Mr. Daniel. We'd love for you to clap for yourself. That is what we do at 𝐥𝐲𝐬. Absolutely amazing. All right, the level of deep learning you've exhibited for your customers, I think the team would, know the customers better than their parents do, even more than they know themselves. What profiling, what learning, what analysis. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so very much for your time, Mr. Daniel.